Trump certainly stiffed the social conservatives. I mean, he appointed conservatives to the Supreme Court bench. And that's all that the Republicans would ever do, if they even did that much. And so,
he made quite a, I mean, I think he pushed in that direction pretty hard. From signal boosting all the trans bathroom bills, banning trans people from the military, the Muslim ban, asking the Supreme Court if they could do anything about keeping gay couples from adopting. It felt like, I mean, even though social conservatism wasn't the forefront of what he was pushing for, between that and all the BLM stuff, it feels like if I was like a really racist guy, I feel like Trump could have kept me happy those 4 years, you know? Maybe not with stuff done, but with stuff mentioned at the very least.
Right. It's like, remember, everything Trump did was pure symbolism. It was just about owning the libs. You know, like it wasn't, you know, Stephen Miller cared about numbers when it came to immigration, but Trump himself didn't care about numbers when it came to anything. All he cared about was the news cycle. And if, you know, like if he got a whole bunch of black people mad at him this news cycle because he yelled at like kneeling athletes or whatever, he won. He felt, oh, I won. I got points.
Oh, it works,
you know,
doesn't it? I mean, in its own way.
What for what then? Like, what? They got nothing.
Well, it's the ongoing process of pulling his supporters to the right. BLM support was like pretty high, like almost bipartisan high, right after the murder of George Floyd. But thanks to the Republican Party and their media stooges, they were successful in dragging the approval down by hyperfixating on the most violent elements of the protests, by doing the whole fentanyl Floyd thing. Did any policy come from this? No, not really. But it was successful in further radicalizing the demographic. And now we're seeing the blowback to that. Now with this critical race theory stuff, you have Texas senators who are trying to ban Martin Luther King Jr. and basically any legacy of non-white people in this country from their social studies books. So it pays dividends down the line, you know, this outrage, this manufactured rage that Republicans are so good at. It maybe in the meantime it doesn't lead to some big federal bill, but you set the stage for really dangerous stuff down the line.
I don't disagree. All of Trump's efforts, and pretty much all of Trump's effect has been radicalizing the Republican Party into thinking that we're in a race war. That's what he's done, and that's what he always was trying to do. Of course, Democrats sort of accepted that this is the truth, but then that's
they don't help.
Start a race war. Start a race war. That's Trump's goal, and it's not actual policy. If we're talking about things like how much money we're going to give parents or whether we're going to cancel student loans, that's just in the realm of policy. But like getting people mad, getting people to think they're going to start a race war is just so very different. That's in such a different realm.
True, but what leaves the lasting impact, right? Policies get overturned by the next administration, and right now the Democrats can barely do anything because we have the 50-50 split in the Senate if we're nice enough to the moderates. Whereas Trump's actions will have radicalized 3 generations of conservatives. While the child tax credit is long dead when the next Republican overturns it, 30 years from now, the echoes of the anti-BLM rhetoric will still be affecting the voting patterns of the voters to come. They run in that.
Republicans have never managed to kill Social Security, though.
That's true.
They've tried, and it's still around. You were making the comparison just a little while ago. So, between the child allowance and Social Security. So I think maybe not,
I mean, maybe
they tried.
Maybe they don't get the child tax credit. Maybe the universal programs, maybe they stay strong, but policies, you can't blame someone right now at this time with our gridlocked legislature for not feeling like policies passed have the most lasting impact in the face of this like cultural this zeitgeist where like I mean 9/11 and everything that took place afterwards, not just the wars, but not just the Patriot Act either, but like the attitude has carried forward so substantially. And I feel like we're going to be dealing with this too, and I just wish Democrats left those like ripples in the water, because the only ones that have been produced lately are from Bernie Sanders. That's why he got so many people over into his camp despite not being known. He was loud and he gave people a message that made them almost, I don't mean this derogatorily, but almost irrationally, fervently in support of him. He gave people like a narrative, which is important for political action. But like moderate Democrats, The energy of the moment is kind of very temporal, and it can be difficult to plan ahead. We all know, like, the most pressing issue of our time is pretty much objectively climate change. If we could get a proportional amount of energy out for climate change protests, like relative to how much of a threat it is to humanity, we'd have all 8 billion of us out in the streets. But we choose, well, we don't choose. We're weird about what we get passionate about, like relative to other things. If race issues are the key of the moment right now, let it be known, my politics are anti-fascism first, okay? I would rather, and God help me for saying this, I would rather deal with some interminably liberal economic system for the rest of my life than pursue socialism and cast the dice on whether or not fascists take over instead, you know? A desperate gamble.
Welcome to the neoliberal shit lib, you know?
They may claim that, but, you know, the old socialists knew fascists were always our #1 enemy under all circumstances. Nothing else even comes close. And then only in the peace of bourgeois democracy are we capable of overthrowing you guys. But one at a time. With the whole Trump thing, look, I'm a big fan of the energy the BLM movement cultivated, but the anti-BLM protests, which weren't very substantial, the anti-BLM energy was the Republican Party. They owned it. They had it lock and key. Every Trump speech was about how they're anti-American, they're burning American cities down, blah, blah. But when it came to the BLM protests, that wasn't like a Democrat thing. In fact, you know, we had those messages after the election of like some Democrats complaining that the radical messaging of BLM protesters had cost them seats, which may or may not be true in some instances. But I never got this impression that like the energy of BLM was attributable to the political will of the Democratic Party. It wasn't. It was the people, you know? But the Democrats, they don't do this stuff. The Republicans, they're so good at it. Every year they can manufacture this world-ending conspiracy that their followers have to unite against. We don't have to rely on conspiracism. We're dealing with real issues here. But the Democratic Party is so obsessed with being nice and calm, placating and bipartisan. And I mean, Biden's a big representative of all of that. That even if we get some policy wins, and we will, and we have, there are policies Biden's pushed for, like the child tax credit, that I'm hugely in support of. We don't get that long-standing contribution to the cultural opposition to these issues. At least not to the extent that we could. With that Texas Senate bill that's going on right now, the one where they're removing MLK, I Have a Dream speech. Right.
Yeah.
The Democrats right now should be losing their mind. They should, every single blue channel, every politician, every time they're in front of a microphone, Republicans are trying to erase MLK from history. They should be frothing. There should be protests of moms out in the streets. There should be, I want to hear about arrests because these protests get rowdy. This is serious stuff. Our education system is being torn apart by political partisans trying to erase the legacy of racism. What do Democrats do? We get a couple news articles. It gets a little bit of time on MSNBC. If Fox News could manufacture CRT, why can't we build energy off of this?